This past Monday, Biffa, Overcharged Egg, and myself met with Colossal Order and Paradox to discuss ways to improve Cities Skylines 2. We were also asked to give our impression of the upcoming economy patch, which we were given an opportunity to try an early access version of. This meeting was NDA free, and we were given the opportunity to ask questions in an open forum, and some of the questions that we asked hadn't been answered until now. And my impression of the meeting is that it was really productive. It was supposed to last an hour, but we ended up talking for nearly 2. Since then, a forum post has also been made in the Cities Skylines 2 forums that I think complements the meeting that I attended really well. So in this video, we'll go over what was discussed at the meeting, as well as the forum post, and I'll give you my thoughts and impressions on both of them. But before we do that, for most of my adult life, I've been struggling with sleep. I can't seem to fall asleep, and when I do, I can't seem to stay asleep, and it makes me miserable. So I've been looking for solutions for years, and I've tried everything. Setting a sleep schedule, cutting out screen time before bed, eliminating caffeine, working out, meditation and controlled breathing, white noise, melatonin, and even this fun sleep hypnosis app that didn't do a thing, but I found incredibly relaxing anyway.
Welcome to this relaxation and well-being recording.
So when Manta Sleep reached out to me a couple months ago to sponsor a video, I said I'd only be willing to consider it if they'd send the product out and let me try it for a while before agreeing. And after getting it, the first thing I noticed is that the mask has an amazing build quality and that it's light as a feather. And it's incredibly comfortable. The Manta Sleep Mask Pro that I have here has these eye cups that apply zero pressure to your eyes, making it possible to sleep on your side while still having all the light blocked out from around you. And the eye cups are attached with Velcro and adjustable to fit your face. I've been wearing this every single day since I've gotten it, and I don't plan on stopping because I've been getting amazing sleep. And I've been waking up feeling refreshed, more creative, and I've been in a better mood every single day. If you'd like to check it out for yourself, click on the link in the video description or use my code CityPlannerPlays to save 10% off your order. A huge shout out to Manta Sleep for helping me finally fall asleep and for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to it. So first of all, I want to start with the background. This was a virtual meeting. I was actually asked to participate in this sort of meeting about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, and it got canceled. Wasn't really given a great explanation. And I was bummed about it, but things happen. It's their choice whether or not they want to have the meeting. So when I was asked again last week, I jumped at the opportunity. The purpose of the meeting was twofold. I have access to an early version of the next build of Cities Skylines 2 with the economy fixes. So it is to take a look at that build and provide them feedback on that build, as well as give them general feedback about the game based on my experience, my play style, and the things that I've seen from this community. So one of the things I've seen a lot is why content creators? Why are content creators at all a part of this? Maybe they shouldn't be. And from as best as I could tell, it's because content creators have provided some good constructive feedback in the past. So the different videos that Biffa put out, the videos that I put out, that was helpful for them engaging some of the things that maybe they weren't seeing. We've also spent a significant amount of time in the game. I can only speak for myself. I've got about 1,100 hours in Cities Skylines 2, so that is beneficial for them. We have access to those beta versions of the game, so we can provide feedback, not just on the game that we've seen up until now, but also the beta versions that we currently have access to. The cross-section of people that they chose have a variety of play styles. You got Egg, he's a detailer. You got Biffa, who's kind of a min-max sort of traffic fixer. And then me, who's really into the management. And then generally, I think it's because we represent large audiences. One of the things that I was able to do was put a community post up and say, give me all of your feedback. And I can collate that and turn that into something that is useful and relay that feedback to everybody. The other thing that I think is really important is that since Cities Skylines 2 has been announced, we've seen thousands, tens of thousands of bits of feedback and read thousands and thousands and thousands of posts about the game, and we were able to provide some of that feedback. So I talked a little bit about the purpose of the meeting. Really, again, it was to provide feedback about the economy patch, share ways to improve Cities Skylines 2, gather information from the developer without the NDA, which is really big. And the meeting otherwise was kind of open-ended. That leads into who I was actually talking to. So at Paradox, it was Luca. Luca might sound familiar. If you watched any of the Cities Skylines streams, he was actually one of the participants in some of the streams a while back. And then Sebastian, who I'm not really aware of. I wasn't really aware of them before this meeting. So Luca is called a business owner, but from as best as I can tell, it's kind of the producer on the Paradox side. And Sebastian is a publishing producer. From Colossal Order, we had Marina. I think you all know who Marina is, the CEO of Colossal Order. And then also Hans. Hans. Now, and I had no idea who Hans is. Hans is the creative director for the game. So as I was going through all of my list of feedback, Hans was actually chiming in saying, didn't think about that. That's not exactly how I play the game. So that's not something that I really thought about. And then saying, I can test this. It was really interesting chatting with Hans in particular, because I really got the feeling that Hans is the one making a lot of decisions. And then the content creators, it was Biffa, Overcharged Egg, and me. So I mentioned that it was kind of an open-ended meeting, and they started out by saying, why don't you give us feedback about the economy patch? And I said, actually, I have a list of things I'd like to talk with you about. And in fact, the list of changes that I put together, I shared with Biffa and Egg prior to the meeting and said, I don't know what this meeting's about, but I think that this is probably a good way to organize our thoughts. And I went through a list in order of importance, in my opinion. In Cities Skylines 2, it doesn't feel like we can lose, and we have to be able to lose if the game is going to have meating. So the rationale, like I said, provides us a sense of accomplishment if we can lose. I have a little image right here of the bankruptcy alert from Cities Skylines 1. And I told them a story. When the first time I played Cities Skylines 1, and I'm guessing many of you had this experience too, I failed. I ruined a city. I did everything wrong. I polluted the water. I went bankrupt, and it pissed me off. I got really upset, and I said, you know what? I'm going to beat this stupid game. And I've started a new city right away. So I expressed that is missing from Cities Skylines 2. It feels like you have unlimited money and there is no purpose of progressing at all. It's impossible to fail. So I offered up a couple of solutions. Make it harder to make money. It's really easy to make money in the game right now. Increase the cost of roads. There's basically no cost to roads, and that's completely the opposite of the way it is in the real world. In the real world, you have so much of the city's budget tied up in the roads and maintenance of infrastructure. And in Cities Skylines 2, it's just not there. Adding the planning roads still allows you to plan out a big city, but not have a game where money doesn't matter. And then increase the cost of demolition, money, and happiness. I played in the Verde Beach map. I built a moderate-sized city. I ran out of money because I was progressing through really quickly. And as I was progressing through, I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to take out a loan. I didn't want to wait. So I deleted my landfill, and I got basically the full cost of it back, and no one was unhappy. And then immediately was able to build the things I wanted to build. So they started importing garbage from outside connections, and it didn't matter because it's free to do so. So it's actually in your best interest not to have garbage when you start a game. And that to me isn't fun. And if you think back to other games that have had these mechanics, generally you're able to get things from outside connections, but it's more expensive than if you were to provide it locally. And maybe once you're down the line, it is the right way to go because you don't want the pollution in your community. But that's a luxury that you work towards, that you earn. One of the interesting things about this bullet is Hans looked at me and said, this is a part of the way that the game was designed, and maybe it's a problem. The game is designed in a way that allows itself to balance out. And I expressed that is actually what makes a game like Cities Skylines fun, troubleshooting those problems. Death waves are not realistic, but being able to troubleshoot a death wave and fix it, that gives you something to do, and it makes you have a sense of accomplishment. Number 2, zoning has to be fixed. Zoning sucks and it constantly breaks. It makes the game less fun. I kind of pulled back on that experience that I just had building a new Verde Beach. There were so many times I just wanted to throw my mouse because zoning wouldn't work right, and it was breaking and shifting all over the place, and it makes the game a ton less fun. We need a zoning toggle similar to CS1. I said it was kind of shocking to me that this tool that everyone wanted for the entirety of Cities Skylines 1 disappeared from Cities Skylines 2, was never worked into it. So I know that that's something that they know it's an issue. Reading between the lines, it seems like this is something that's been really difficult for them to fix. Number 3, they need to implement quality of life improvements into the game. There were a number of prominent mods that had functionality that I think people were just used to, that they expected to be implemented into Cities Skylines 2. And it's just not. Some of them are really basic. We expected a line tool. I personally want to be able to adjust the info view so it's not flashing white at you all the time. We should have better units of measurement. So as someone who doesn't fully understand metric, thank you, America, having feet instead of yards is a nonsensical measurement that's only used for American football. Otherwise, we need feet, and restoring units is helpful if you're trying to show someone how to do something. It's an easy measurement, even if it means nothing. It'd be great if we could actually have parks on paths, not just on the sides of roads. It's It's one of the things that I always thought was pretty strange in Cities Skylines 1 that I was hoping would be fixed in Cities Skylines 2. In the real world, parks that are not on roads generally have paths that can support up to a fire truck, and emergency management vehicles are able to reach those off-street amenities. I'd love to see something like that in Cities Skylines 2 as well. I'd like to see the extended road tools mod incorporated into the replace tool. So I think that this would allow you to make infrastructure that is more precise than we can currently do. And on the console, that's going to be key. Finally, remove all the fences from parks. And this is an interesting one too. So Hans actually said that all the parks in Finland have fences around them, which is why all the assets in Cities Skylines 2 have fences around them. And while we have a lot of fences around our parks where I live, most of them aren't fenced in. And I think the big thing is that it makes it impossible for you to be able to chain parks together. So I told them that they really nailed parks in Cities Skylines 1, and they needed to return to the sort of functionality that they had before at a minimum, if we're not going to have park life, which, at this point, with all DLCs being delayed, who knows when that would actually come. And then one more thing in number 3, allow landscaping to overlap. So what I mean by that is in Cities Skylines 1, you could take trees and put them all side by side and get them really close to one another. In Cities Skylines 2, you have that circle boundary around a tree that makes it impossible to put them side by side unless you have anarchy on. And that's something that I voiced that as a frustration before release. It's still a frustration now. I think it makes detailing less fun. So number 4, fully modular control of industries. The rationale is that the current system isn't fun, doesn't look realistic. So you can see on the image on the right that what we see is random farm buildings spawning in fields. It's really strange, and it's really a step back from the industries DLC. So while I'm happy to see that we have specialized industries in the game, it's crazy to me that the buildings just randomly spawn for farms. So allow users to manually place all those industry buildings just like you could in Cities Skylines 1, and make sure that you actually can control them and make them look reasonable and realistic. Number 5, unlock more buildings at the start. So this comes back to a conversation that I had with Algernon and Toady in the Cities Skylines 2 modding Discord a million years ago. It's kind of where the historic start mod came from. As it sits with Cities Skylines 2, you're pushed to create cities that are pretty unrealistic. And that's the way it was in Cities Skylines 1 as well. You're just given this plot of land off the interstate and you just build a city. I would like to see that change. So rather than being given this push to build an unrealistic city, unlock buildings that are currently locked at the start. So specialized industries, even if it's just basic stuff like farms, mines, and forestry, that gives rationale for a city to exist in a place. And that's why places exist. Another one, small passenger trains, small cargo stations, or even the ability to drop a stop on a track and have a platform show up. So that allows you, again, a reason for that city existing. The city exists because there is a train line going through there, and you have a train that stops there every now and then. Unlock basic parks. I think it's crazy that the basic parks are locked within the progression tree. And then unlock small offices. And that one's probably a little more challenging because of the way that education works, but small towns have offices. I think it would be really nice to have all of those things. Number 6, better traffic management tools. And I think the picture on the right does all the speaking. The existing system in Cities Skylines 2 is a major step backwards from the systems that we had in Cities Skylines 1 that people wanted improved. They need to completely rethink this. So that's bringing back priority roads, bringing back the transportation routing tool, bringing back the roadway renaming tool, providing advanced stop, yield, and lighting controls. Stop signs are something that I never really understood why it wasn't in Cities Skylines 1. I'd love to see it in this game, and being able to control those at the intersection level, if you want, would be excellent. Adding the lane connectors, and that's one thing where they kind of took a step back and they said, well, if we were to do anything like that, we would do it kind of the way that we do things. We sometimes will create mods, but do it in our own way. And you kind of get that. And I said at that point, I would have never imagined how they would create that tree replacement tool for the roads. They did it in their own way, and it worked really well. So I would trust that they would come up with something really good. Then the other thing is stop all the teleporting. Goods teleport to homes when they're built and businesses when they're built. There are certain sorts of goods that just teleport around the map, and ultimately it's less fun. Number 7, allow access to props. Restricting props in the vanilla game makes it impossible for detailers to enjoy the game. And for people who aren't major detailers, like myself, I don't consider myself a major detailer. I like to create special places in cities, and without all the props, you're not able to do that. So I said the Find It mod could just wholesale be incorporated into the game. They asked, would all of the props be available or just some of them? I think that the different creators had different ideas about it. I said that I would be fine if just basic props were available. We don't need, air conditioners, for instance, necessarily in a vanilla game. However, being able to find things with a search functionality and an eyedropper would be absolutely amazing. And then my final big important fix, these are the things that I think absolutely need to be fixed. This is kind of the most complicated one, and that's improve the building spawning and zoning mechanic. So one of the things I really don't like about Cities Skylines 2 is that if you have a whole bunch of blocks and you zone them all in, rather than just a section of buildings spawning in, they'll all spawn in at once, which is really unrealistic. Also, if higher density is available, people will decide, I'm not going to move to your city until there's a single family home because that's what I want. So I think to fix this, there should be a maximum vacancy number in your city. So people have to move to your city before new buildings will spawn, even if there's demand for it. Basically, I'd like to see a mechanic that prevents all of the buildings from spawning in at once. I live in Madison, Wisconsin. It is a city that is growing very, very rapidly. We've got new neighborhoods that get platted out and built in 10, 20 years. But even in a place where there's a lot of demand, a developer only builds housing when the previous housing has been filled in. So I think that if we could have it a little bit slower, a little bit more staggered, a little less, boom, everything just shows up, it would be a lot more reasonable and a lot more fun. And then I'd like to see, and this might just be a bug, I'd like to see residents move into higher density residential if that's all that's available. Reasonably, if someone wants to move to a city and all that's available is an apartment and they want a single family home, they're going to move there and they're going to be unhappy that they got an apartment. So I'd like to see, I think you've all probably seen that small apartments is making people unhappy. It seems like anyone who moves into low income housing in the game receives that, but not everyone's going to feel that way in reality. They're only going to feel that way if they actually can afford something bigger and they want that and it's just not available. So I'd love to see that change get made. And that would allow you to basically, if you wanted to create a city of a whole bunch of towers, you could do that. It just might make people unhappy because they'd rather live in the suburbs. Now, I said that was the end of my list, but there is more. And at this point, I realized I was droning on for a long time and I probably should let Biffa and Overcharged Egg talk for a while. So I took a step back and I have a wish list of things that I wanted to get to as well. So then Biffa went and said all the things that Biffa said that were in his video. Go check that out. For the video, I'll leave it in the video description, so you can definitely check that out if you're interested in that. I'm not sure if Egg has a stream or a video out right now. If he does, I will certainly link to that as well. So they went through their list of things, and then we were about to move on to kind of a free-form discussion, and I said, well, actually, I've got these other things that I really want you to take a look at as well. So I have a number of wish list items. The first is providing a limited number of interregional trains. One of the things that I think really stinks about Cities Skylines 2 is you have to have a full-size train yard to have one train in your community. And I'd love to see you have the ability to actually get regional trains that are maintained in other cities and outside connections that maybe cost more, but they allow you to have a regional train stop in your city. So you can have a passenger train or a cargo train without that full-size train yard. Maybe you give 5 and that's the limit. Whatever limitation they want to have, I think that this would be a huge improvement, particularly at the start of a game. Number 2, they should be gating upgrades, not the buildings themselves. So I think it's really strange that certain city services such as police and fire is completely gated at the start of a city. So you have to wait to get to level 4 or 5 to be able to unlock these things. And rather than gating those things, I'd like to see them all unlocked. And you can really kind of choose your own adventure with those things. But the upgrades, like right here in the image, you're seeing that there is the upgrade, the garage extension upgrade for a fire department. Gate that in the progression tree, and that's what you can unlock, or gate that behind a milestone. So I think that it should be that way for police, fire, all the schools, all the transportation options kind of across the board. Number 3, eliminate the passive XP system. I hate it so much. It's super annoying. I think I even mentioned in one of those early access like videos looking at the dev diaries that I hope that we can turn that off, and we can't. It's irritating, and it also forces you through the progression. Yeah, ding, 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 constantly. And it's making the game easier by constantly pushing you forward. I can't think of another game that's similar to this where you have an XP system and you're just getting XP for existing. I don't like it. So I think that that should be eliminated, or at least there should be an option to turn it off. Number 4, provide small versions of city service buildings. There's a whole bunch of city service buildings that feel out of place in small towns or are monotonous to place because you've only got one option. The other thing is some of these buildings are kind of out of place in large cities. So I think that you can kind of go in both ways. I'd love to see a combined K through 12 school. I lived in a small town that was next to a smaller town that had a K through 12 school. And when we were moving to the small town, I remember begging my dad not to move to the city with a combined K through 12 school. So yeah, I'd love to see those smaller versions of the K through 12 school, elementary school, high school, community college, a small library, a small post office. The blueprint is already there for it. There's already the small coal power plant. I'd honestly love if you could upgrade these buildings into a larger building in the future or have modular additions. That's one of the things that I think is kind of weird about the small coal power plant, but this is at least a path to get there. And then I'd love to see, this is kind of my big idea. And this is the reason why it's at the very end of the list, is this is the most challenging one to implement. And it's the one that I know that they're very reluctant to do. And that's community scenarios. The whole idea behind this is that I think that Cities Skylines 2 lacks a sense of accomplishment when you do things. And that means that there's not a lot of replayability. But scenarios give you that. As soon as I brought up scenarios, and I think Biffa brought up scenarios at another point as well, but I brought this back up at the second time and I said, the reason why this is so important is it gives you that sense of replayability and it can provide a sense of community. Now, Colossal Order said they had I always struggle with this word, telemetry data, that basically said that nobody's playing the scenarios. And I basically said that I thought that no one was playing the scenarios because there weren't telemetry. I'm screwing it up. I think the reason why nobody played scenarios is that the maps that we had available weren't very good and they didn't get updated very often. I think there may be less than a dozen scenarios in general. This idea basically came from Mini Motorways. And if you've ever played that game, there are weekly scenarios there. So I think they should add the scenarios back into the game and provide users a system, telemetry. Provide a system where users could submit scenarios to Colossal Order, Paradox, or the community for voting, so that every week or every other week or every month, I don't really care about the time frame, but have the ability to have that thing that the community could rally around and compete against one another in the game. Include a leaderboard so that you could have either scores or populations or the amount of money that you made, things that get people interested in wanting to redo these things and keep playing them, gets creators interested in showcasing them on their channel, gets scenario makers and map makers interested in making these scenarios. I think it could be a monster feature in the game if it were done right, but it would require a lot of work. And right now they're working on a game that they aren't able to make DLC for, so maybe this is a long-term thing. I don't know that it's going to happen, but I planted the seed. Telemetry. I give up. So I don't want to steal all of the other creators' thunder, but I did want to provide some of the best suggestions or my favorite suggestions that came from Biffa, Egg, and some of the conversations that we had. So some of the game improvement ideas, I know Biffa had the idea of having a variety of updates that focused on certain types of players. So providing a detailers update that had new trees and rocks and other detailing options. Providing a network update for people who wanted to fix traffic so you could have new roadway options that are available as a part of an update. Biffa in particular wanted advanced traffic management built into the game if desired, so timed traffic lights. Not surprising. One of the ideas that I really liked that Biffa had was difficulty sliders. So having different difficulty sliders, kind of like Manor Lords, so that if you wanted to have all of your traffic lights be timed, you could select that in there. If you wanted to have more money at the start, you could do that. If you wanted, traffic that despawned, you could enable that at that point in time. Having that right when you start the city. Biffa also mentioned that the traffic flow is always stuck at 60, and it's right here. I'm showing you this. Yes, it's at 62% Magnolia County. It never changes, so fix that. Number 6, this is another Biffa one. Make disasters meaningful. And after going through disasters recently myself, in the real world where trees are getting blown down, I completely agree. Disasters change the course of history for a city, so it would be really great to actually have them be meaningful in the game. One of the things that I thought was interesting is Biffa said that he basically hasn't seen any wildfires, and it's the exact opposite for me. So just in general, disasters are broken. They need to be fixed. Production change. Biffa mentioned this as well, that he'd been adjusting the sliders to try to attract certain industries into his city, and it just doesn't do anything. So this is, again, and this is where Hans chimed in and said, basically the reason why this is happening is the region is balancing things out constantly. The economy patch might have an impact on this. We'll have to see. This is something that Biffa wants more visibility, more stats, more of an understanding of what the overall market for certain materials looks like. And then Biffa, again, mentioned obvious exploits that shouldn't work. So the exploit that Biffa mentioned was a city with a train station as its only outside connection and only pedestrian roads still working just fine. That shouldn't work. The other one would be the power plants. It's got, as mentioned, spamming power plants to be able to just progress your way through the milestones, eliminating all of your transit in your city and being able to still have the exact same traffic flow. All of those things make the game feel like it's broken and they need to be fixed. Egg mentioned adding a forestry brush to the base game, and this completely slipped my mind, but we have half of the forestry brush there. Rather than having the ability to select multiple trees and just paint with those, you can only do one, and if we had the brush, we could do it. That's part of a mod that doesn't help console players. Egg also mentioned making the road tool snappier. Basically said that it feels like everything slides around. It's hard to give instructions or replicate things because nothing snaps. Like in Cities Skylines 1, it just snaps. So this might be making that snapping stronger when you have it enabled. But this is something that Hans in particular said, yeah, I know what you mean, and it does need to be fixed. So I'm a little more hopeful that that does get improved. And then Egg brought up more themes and textures. And this is something we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But basically in Cities Skylines 1, you had boreal, temperate, desert, tropical, all these different map themes that had different textures. The sky was a different color. It made you feel like you were in a different place. And without those themes, it just feels like everyone is building the same city and nothing changes. And the textures that we have aren't particularly good. So that's something I completely agree with as well. And then, so those were game improvement ideas, but then there's also the perception ideas. Biffa brought this up. Just stop apologizing at this point and just fix the game. That's what people want. If you want to improve the perception of Cities Skylines 2, just get stuff done. Do not send community managers to the wolves. This is something that was brought up. Don't have a stream where people can't answer questions. If you're going to have a stream, it needs to be open, like answer people's questions as they come up. Just understand that you're going to be in an uncomfortable situation, most likely. Number 3, and this was particularly uncomfortable, but I think very important to have in the dialogue, is that the CEO shouldn't be communicating with the public, or CEOs plural, unless it's an apology and then get out of the way. But just in general, a CEO is someone that you generally can't relate to. And so this is something that Marina talked a little bit about. She said that up through 2018, she had been one of the leads for communication, so it's kind of difficult to give that role up. And then I brought up they need to publish patches faster. And I want to talk a little bit about this one for a second, because right here you can see, here's all the patches that we've had for Cities Skylines 2. And I saw on Reddit, there was a post that said, patches are coming out at a glacial pace right now as people feel it. So what we were told, there is a certain system that they always need to progress through. So if you have a patch, no matter how big and how small, you need to run it through QA. That takes a certain number of days. And then they need to fix the bugs that they find in QA. And then it gets QA'd again. And then if everything's fine, then it goes for certification. So certification is a process where basically Steam and Microsoft will make sure that you're releasing something stable on their platform. This is something that when I worked in game development was the thing that you were always pushing towards. So that's a couple of days as well. So from their perspective, it's better to have a gigantic patch with lots and lots of fixes than to have a bunch of small patches. But I told them, no, it's not right to do it that way because people aren't feeling the changes then. They could score some big wins by just including fixes to a couple of small, obvious things. So the things that I mentioned were snow on some of those grass textures that just never shows up. It's one of those things that's maddening. And Marina actually mentioned that their artists hate that as well. It bothers them. The signature buildings that don't work should be fixed. And it's crazy that hasn't been fixed. And Hans actually looked at me and said, wait, what? And it feels like they have had such a fire hose of feedback that they weren't aware of that. So I said, look at the most popular mods. And this is one of the most popular mods because it legitimately fixes a base game issue. So I said that, these are things that I know it slows things down. Maybe they don't get as much done as they'd like to, but it makes people feel like they're being listened to, like things are improving and there's a reason to continue to play the game. So they seem to understand that. We'll have to see if they actually act on that. Now, this is Phil from the future. And I just want to say, I realized I forgot to mention one thing. I also asked Colossal Order if they'd ever be open to doing public betas or early accesses. And they immediately said that they feel like they're too big for early access and too small for public betas. And what I think they mean by that is they think that smaller companies can get away with early access and it's appropriate. And for public betas, they would need more staff to be able to manage all the feedback that they would receive. Ultimately, I think it's a personal decision whether or not they want to do that, and they're clearly not interested, which is completely fine. I wanted to talk about a couple of surprising bits of information from the free-flowing conversation that went on from there. So that was, the meeting was scheduled for an hour, but then we just kept talking. And I kept prodding about a couple of things too. One of the things that we talked about right away was the economy patch. The economy patch is huge. So it's been a long time since the last patch. The reason why it's been so long is this patch is monstrous. Marina apologized because I know that there were some people freaked out about existing saves not working with the patch that we were provided, said that the existing saves will work. However, this patch is so big, they need to write a dev diary explaining how to migrate saves to this new version of Cities Skylines 2. I said with that, like, this is what I'm good for. Like, if you could let me know how to do this, I can make a video explaining to everyone else how to do it and show you, not just a bunch of text. So this is going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing. So when this patch is released, it's going to be a major update. And one of the things that was released today was actually this bit of information on the CS2 forums. Right now, the implementation is done. They're currently polishing it, getting feedback from the beta testing group, which I'm a part of and some other folks are a part of. And then they're going to release it to the wider community. They're trying to fix the economy. It's big. It's a big patch. The window for this is June 3rd to June 19th. They're not going to give the specific date until they're ready, which I think is great. We have a window. We have an idea that is really working around the whole summer break that exists in Scandinavian countries. And I was told a little bit about this. Basically, the reason why this break exists is it's actually legally required in Scandinavian countries, which honestly is pretty damn cool that they get this big break. In terms of being a worker there, I'm sure it's fantastic. In terms of releasing game updates, not so great because you don't have the ability to work in the summer. Though the next patch has primarily a focus on fixes for the economy, there is also an upgrade to the building upgrade system. Basically, you get this radius and you can put the buildings in the radius and delete specific upgrades. They're going to be providing more details about that, but that is also included with the economy upgrades. So just to kind of gives you an idea of what a big patch this is. So the next thing I asked about was basically I had an open-ended question. I said, is there anything that we'd be surprised about with Cities Skylines 2 that you can share or that you feel comfortable sharing? And with the console release, they said that they have a good build right now, but there's some instability issues. So as a result, it continues to make its way through the revision process. So here's where I'm going to talk a little bit about perception. I always thought that Marina seemed like a very confident person. I think she's a year older than me, and she's been the CEO of a company for, at this point, over a decade. So I get the confidence from her, and she seemed very confident in this. She said, "Kidding October seems like it's completely fine." Paradox immediately pumped the brakes and said, we're hoping that we hit October, but things could happen. So yeah, it seemed like Colossal Order feels much better about it than Paradox. Paradox though, the Paradox is in a spot where they have had multiple delays, so it makes sense that they would be much more reluctant. Prison Architect 2 just got delayed. Life by You, the Sims competitor, got delayed indefinitely. And that's after a year of delays. So it makes sense that they would pump the brakes, but it sounds like they're making some good progress there. On the forums today, they actually posted that the build that they have has stability issues with crashes and FPS issues. This is coming, you got to remember, all of this stuff is coming from Paradox, so they are much more cautious than Colossal Order is. Then I asked about Mac and Linux releases, and I got a kind of a chuckle there. So this was supposed to be released at launch. The Mac and Linux versions of Cities Skylines 2 were supposed to be released at launch. What I was explained is that Unity basically comes with a switch that allows you to port games to Mac and Linux, and all the mods that have been released should work with the game if it were ported to Mac and Linux. At this point, they're not going to work on it just yet. And the reason for that is they have contractual obligations that they have to meet with their partners. So that's Microsoft and Valve, I'm guessing, that they have to figure out with the console version of the game and with the Ultimate Edition. So they're going to be focusing on that first. And then Marina kind of just said, well, within 2 years, we'll have something. They didn't guarantee that it's going to happen. They're going to try it and see if it works. We'll have to see. I'm really hopeful though, especially with some of the tools that are coming out. I think more time means that, particularly for the Mac, it's much more likely. And then one of the things I brought up is that for Linux, we're looking at a world now where Steam is pushing Linux so far forward with Proton and all the things that you can do there that I guess I'm less worried about Linux and more worried about Mac support. And I reiterated how important it is for people. I pointed actually to my computer behind me and said, I started playing simulators on a Mac. SimCity 2000 was on a Mac for me. A lot of simulators have support for Macs and have for years. So I think it means a lot to a lot of people. And GeForce Now, it just, it's not good enough, and there was a little brief discussion about GeForce Now and modding and how that's all working. And basically, they said that they're working on it. They're trying to work on modding. No more updates there. And then they talked about the future features that they're going to be added into the game. Just a couple of them. And some of these you've already known about because of the post from today. So biomes were supposed to be available at launch. So these are different climate zones, different textures, different grasses, different everything. It was supposed to be available at launch. It's another one of those things like Mac and Linux support that got cut because of the launch window and all the issues that they had there. So hopefully we'll see that. They didn't commit to a time frame for that, but I think that we all stated how important that is to us, so hopefully they get it. Next, they offered a bit of information about a small content patch that'll come after the economy patch, which they talked a little bit about today in the post that was on the CS2 forums. Part of it will be a painter, part of it will be new, smaller service buildings. The ones that they directly commented on were a smaller train station and a smaller school. They also said that when the region packs come out, those will all have their own service buildings as well that are a variety of sizes. So there will be a whole bunch of service buildings eventually. But again, we're waiting on region packs until the assets are actually available in game. So they will be free. This small pack will have, I think, 10 assets, they said. And then the region packs they've already announced that those are free. So those will be coming. They said that they're making progress on assets, but those won't be done before the legally required, again, summer break. And then the last thing that I thought was really interesting is they talked about the water mechanic. They just kind of threw this in there. They said that they've heard that the water mechanic isn't good. It's a struggle for map makers. It's a struggle for everybody, and they're going to be completely redoing it and reworking that. But it's something that is probably going to come a little bit down the line. So we're almost at the end of this. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the general vibe of the meeting. And I'd say in general, like I mentioned, Colossal Order, confident, they were listening. They were talking about why things were the way that they were. One of the things I found to be interesting is it's the first time I heard Colossal Order talk about the game not having 10 years of support. And they basically said that they hope they have the opportunity to develop the game for the next 10 years, but that's going to require people come back to the game and that they're not lost forever. And they acknowledge that people might just there's a certain group of people that might just be done with the game because of how disastrous the launch was. So that was sad. That was the first time that I've heard them actually say, like, they've got to get this figured out. And they know that time is not on their side. They said that they're not going to be able to fix things as quickly as people want them fixed. And that's going to be what they're running up against. So I think that's a big part of why this meeting happened. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if they can pull a rabbit out of their hat. Next steps. What's going to happen? So I want to talk about two different next steps. Next steps from Colossal Order, Paradox, and next steps from me, because I'm not done. It's not just me talking to Colossal Order and doing a data dump. I want to actually get feedback from everybody. I'm going to do it the way I did it when I was actively planning for my community. Going back to what Colossal Order is going to do, they've been getting feedback from the long-standing modders group. They've been getting feedback from the people that applied as part of the map makers, and then some of the content creators that were let in after that. So we've got that group that has been giving feedback. And then there's the meeting that I was a part of with representatives from the community who shared their feedback. But they are going to be surveying everybody again after the economy patch comes out to figure out, how people feel about it. They're trying to dampen expectations just in general. I think that that's something that if you read this, they want to make sure they're on the right path, but they know that they're not going to make everyone happy. But I highlighted something here that I want to make very, very, very clear, because this is something that has really bothered me about what's happening in the community at large. They're asking for constructive feedback. They mentioned that there is an inbox. I think it was like company@colossalorder.fi that there's actually a human that reads every email that goes through that inbox. They go through the forums, they go through Reddit, they watch content creators' videos, and they get the feedback from that. But I will let you know that when you are not constructive with your feedback, you are hurting your cause. You are not getting your feedback listened to. I understand that if you're frustrated, it can be satisfying to lash out and tell people, I'm pissed at you for what you've done for releasing the game in the state that it's in. But if you want to see the game improve, we need to provide constructive feedback. So I really hope that everyone takes that, internalizes that, and provides that feedback, because there's been way too much negativity. They are listening, but you've got to relay your message in a way that is respectful. The moment you attack somebody is the moment that they tune you out. So we've got to resist that temptation to just get negative and just attack. There's a question in here. Why did they release the game in the state that it's in? One of the things that, going back to vibes, that I got is that everyone involved in this is upset. If you are a fan of the game, you got a game that maybe you couldn't play, that you pre-ordered, that you were super excited about. If you're a content creator, maybe you thought that your channel was going to take off and it didn't. Maybe you feel lied to about the state of the game at release, and that upsets you. I know that that's kind of the boat that I was in for a long time, that I thought the game was going to be in a better place than it was, and that's what we were being told, and it didn't happen. If you are Paradox, you paid for a game. You were hoping it would get delivered in a certain time frame. You added years onto that time frame, and the game was a disaster and it tarnished your name. If you're Colossal Order, you had a vision for a game, and that vision didn't get executed because of the time frame that you had or the budgetary constraints that you had. So yeah, there's lots of different reasons, and we all are unhappy about what this is. But I think at this point, if we want to see the game improve, we've got to be constructive about it. So that's what I would implore all of you, and particularly as it relates to other members of the community. No reason to lash out at other members of the community for feeling differently than you, particularly modders. There's been some of that, and that's been really frustrating as well. And then taking a step back, what am I going to do? So you might have seen I put this community post up. There's 2,000 likes, 492 comments, and probably more coming after this stream. If you want me to relay your feedback to Colossal Order and Paradox, I'm going to be going through all of these comments and putting them into a spreadsheet, trying to find general themes and providing a number of likes. If you can see them in the little corner, likes. I will release the spreadsheet to everyone though. So as soon as I'm done with it, I hope to have it done Saturday. Let's say Saturday actually. So you still have time. Please submit your comments on the community tab on YouTube, because I will take them, and I promise you, I will look at every single one of them. I'll leave a heart on there, and I'll put this together and we'll do something with it. And then I wanted to end on this slide right here. I think one of the very best places to get information about Cities Skylines 2 is not the official Cities Skylines Discord. It's not my Discord. It's not Biffa's Discord or anyone else's. It's actually Cities 2 Modding. They have a really great announcements page, and it's the very first place that I heard about the forum post on the Cities Skylines 2 forum about the update. So they talk about in their announcement the major points of the post on the forum, and then they even give Revo. Nice work putting this timeline together, a projected timeline. So we're looking at the economy overhaul beginning to mid-June, the vacation going late June through early August. The free content will be post-summer, and then the console release October, hopefully. So Revo, awesome work with that. Awesome. Now, before we wrap things up, I do want to say that Colossal Order made it very clear that the suggestions that we were making wouldn't necessarily be incorporated into the game. And if they were incorporated into the game, it's not necessarily something that's going to happen very quickly. So stay tuned. And if you agree with some of these suggestions, do make them yourself as well. And you can do that by emailing them at this email address, or hopping in the Cities Skylines 2 forums and providing your feedback there as well. And then I want to thank Paradox and Colossal Order for giving me the opportunity to chat with them. And I want to thank all of you for the feedback that you've already provided on the community tab. Keep writing those comments. I'm going to be collating them and turning them into something that I can send to Paradox and Colossal Order, so that they have an idea of how we as a community feel about the game and what we would like to see improved. And I think that we're going to leave it here. And I really want to thank you for joining me today. I really hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that you've found the information that I'm providing valuable. I also want to thank everyone that was on Twitch yesterday. Everyone was very supportive, very kind, and also very flexible with me, as I had some things come up in my personal life that I had to step away from an ongoing stream to attend to. Thank you all so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.